Recording in progress.
Oh. Good evening and welcome to the June 16th meeting of the City of Pacifica Planning Commission. This meeting is called to order. May I please have a roll call?
One moment.
Certainly.
All right. Chair Hauser,
Present.
Vice Chair Ferguson,
Present.
Commissioner Davis,
Present.
Commissioner Devine,
Present.
Commissioner Godwin,
Present.
Commissioner Redfield.
Present.
Commissioner Devine, can you please lead us in the salute to the flag? Thank you, Commissioner Devine. Before we get into administrative business, any member of the public wishing to make public comment on any item should bring a speaker card to the front and hand it to staff. Please indicate the agenda item on which you wish to speak or oral communications. If dialed in or are calling in by Zoom, when the opportunity for public comment is announced, please press the pound key or the raised hand function. If dialing in once identified for your turn, please press *6 to unmute yourself, wait for a few minutes, and then begin speaking. Public meetings are a limited public forum, meaning that there are rules for commenting at these meetings. Comments on non-agendized items must address matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission, and comments on agendized items must relate to that specific item. If comments do not fall into one of these categories, the city will provide you with an initial warning to stay within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city or on topic. If the warning is not followed, I will direct the city clerk to cut off the microphone. And throughout this warning system, I will seek the assistance of the city attorney in identifying comments not related to the agenda item or not within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. So for administrative business, okay. For administrative business, I don't have any public comments on the administrative business. Are there any folks on Zoom or on the phone who would like to speak on minutes or order of agenda?
Chair, it looks like there's no raised hands at this time.
Okay, then I will close public comment and ask for someone to make a motion on the order of the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda as noted.
I second that. Let's please vote. We can vote by roll call if easy.
Can't see it.
I think it's not on.
Oh, there it goes. Okay. Sorry.
All right, that motion
That
passes
motion passed.
unanimously. On to the minutes of June 2nd. Does anyone have comments on the minutes, or would anyone like to make a motion for approval?
I have a comment.
Please.
So on packet page number 58, I just wanted to clarify, it's a pretty subtle distinction, but one that I want to make. Let me get to it real quick. And I also wanted to comment that I thought the minutes were really well done this time. They were really easy to follow, and I found them pretty accurate. But at the end, when I asked a clarifying question, and it says, she said she would like that language, which they all do, and it was protective language that Commissioner Berman had requested for the Sanchez site. And the distinction I want to make is I said that I would like that language, which I thought we all did, in case council decided to leave it in there, meaning in the housing element. And then instead of and, I said, but she knows one of their options is to make the recommendation that they pull Site 23, and she asked if that is something they can do.
So just to clarify, are you asking in the penultimate paragraph on packet page 58 that the and becomes a but?
The first "and" after the "all due" comma in the second sentence of the second to last paragraph, I'd like that comma and removed. And then, yes, the second "and" in that sentence would become a "but."
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone else have comments?
We'll find it.
Okay, great. Would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Davis, would you like to?
Sure, I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
And just to clarify, was it as revised by Commissioner Davis?
Oh, yes.
One would think, I would know that. I would make a motion that we approve the minutes as revised by Commissioner Davis, myself, and as written.
Okay, I believe Commissioner Godwin seconded physically before you seconded. Do you accept the amended motion?
Yes.
Okay, then let's please vote. Okay.
Motion by Commissioner Davis and seconded by Commissioner Godwin. That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. And we do have a designation of liaison tonight for the item that is before us, which is the short-term rental ordinance for, I believe, July. I'm getting back to the top of the agenda, but I believe it's for July 14th. Yep.
Correct.
I am unable to attend. Is someone else able to make that meeting?
I can make myself available for the meeting.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Devine.
Yeah, I'm available as an alternate as well.
Fabulous. So Commissioner Devine with Commissioner Ferguson as an alternate, if something comes up, are the liaisons for July 14th. Okay, well, that concludes our administrative business, and that takes us to oral communications. I do have one speaker card for Brian Renero. Brian, before you start speaking, let me just remind you that the time allowed to speak is 3 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm here to talk about, of course, the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan, specifically Site 23, which contains and includes the Margaret Owens Concert Hall and the Sanchez Art Center, the park, and the dog park. There's no reason that this needs to be included as a Surplus Land Act parcel. It is, in fact, not surplus. It has a purpose, and it is one that's cherished, as we've seen in public comment in prior meetings of the Commission, that the majority of Pacificans want to see this site preserved intact and not modified. And so for that reason, I please ask that you make your recommendations onto the plan to remove Site 23 from the surplus plan, the SLA, and also specifically remove the by right provisions for this piece of land. One of the things I'm quite concerned about with regard to the by right is, of course, that while there is some word service towards the goal of getting future input from the community on what this plan is going to do, if the by right provision is already implicitly or even tacitly approved by the Commission, that circumvents all future public discussion. It's off the table. So especially for this site, and in every single case that the by right provision has been applied to any part of the CIP, I would ask that you review that very, very closely and strike the by right off of every single one of those parcels. The other item I'd like to say about this is I'm very disappointed that that was presented to Council and presented to the Commission as something that was a requirement from staff, that it was required by law that this be by right, when the answer was not clear. This is a very, this sets the tone about public expectations about the by right provision. I want to ask staff, I would ask that the commissioners please clarify with staff what criteria was used to determine to say in public materials that this site was subject to by right provisions when the city attorney is necessary to answer this question. That's a terrible mistake, an egregious mistake that sets the tone of the conversation going forward and the public's expectation about what input they can have over this issue, including how it might influence the Commission and the Council as well. So that's a terrible error that got on there, and now the public feels that There is no, this is a foregone conclusion. We're putting the cart way before the horse, and the public needs their voice, and they need it now more than ever. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. That is the last speaker card I have on oral communications. Is there anyone on Zoom or on the phone?
Chair, we have one raised hand.
Okay.
Dinah Verby, you may go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. I'm not getting any visual on the Zoom. Is that by design or is there something wrong? Can you hear me?
Hi, Dinah, we can hear you. At this point, I think because it's a public comment, what we can do is after, if this is your comment, thank you. If you have additional stuff, please
No,
go
I
ahead.
have additional comments. I just wanted to let you know of that technical issue because I don't have a visual on the meeting.
Okay.
But if you can hear me, then I can go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm also here to speak again on the Sanchez Art Center situation regarding the rezoning. And I know that it's not coming back to you until July 7th, but I was really hoping that the commissioners and staff would listen to these comments in the hope that it might help inform the findings and recommendations for that meeting. And I want to thank Commissioner Davis for her request at the last meeting for staff to come back with a recommendation to the City Council to remove the Sanchez Art Center, which is also Sanchez Park, from the housing element and the rezoning program. You know, I've heard staff say that there are no plans to demolish the Art Center. And there may be no plans now, but anyone looking at the polygon map for that site knows that it's very clear what the intention is, which is to replace the existing buildings. And I heard at least one commissioner talk about how old the buildings are and that they might need replacing. And so I felt compelled to speak again to try to explain emphatically why it is imperative to preserve the buildings as they are, not rebuild them, and not simply have language preserving the current use. In an ideal world, having a rebuilt, modernized art and music center would be awesome, but the problem is, if you destroy these buildings now, you will destroy the businesses and the art center. There's no comparable space for them to relocate within Pacifica, and even if there were, who would pay for that? Please remember that in addition to being a regional visitor destination, the Art Center is a functioning group of businesses. People are employed there. Artists have affordable workspaces there that provide their livelihoods. Occupants would lose their jobs and their source of income if the buildings are demolished. So, and loss of those businesses and jobs is contrary to the economic development goals in our general plan. Also, the rezoning would eliminate a large portion of the open space that makes up Sanchez Park, contrary to the open space and conservation goals of the general plan. Loss of jobs, businesses, parks, and our most significant visitor-serving destination would be very harmful to the general welfare of the community.
Thank you, Ms. Verby. I really appreciate it. I think at this point, the 3 minutes are up.
All right. Thank you.
And I want to give staff an opportunity to fix any sort of tech issues.
Chair, there are no other raised hands at this time.
Okay, well then I will close oral communications, and I will note, as one of the commenters did as well, that the item that folks spoke about is coming back to the Planning Commission on July 7th. Okay, that brings us to new public hearings. Tonight we have file number 2025-001, text amendment TA-157-25, initiated by the City of Pacifica to repeal and replace Article 49, short-term rentals of the City of Pacifica zoning regulations. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, let me get that pulled up.
Thank you, Chair Hauser, and good evening, Planning Commissioners. I'm Samantha Updegrave, Community Development Director, and I'm presenting the council-directed changes to the repeal and replacement of the city's short-term rental ordinance. Can you advance the, or I don't know if. In the presentation, I'll provide an overview, a brief overview of the short-term rental regulations, the purpose of the changes, Planning Commission's recommendation to the City Council in January of 2025, City Council's deliberations in February and May, and highlight the changes that they directed. Wait, we're having all kinds of technology issues tonight. I'm so sorry. Okay. So a short-term rental or an STR is the use of a dwelling unit or portion of it for the rental of rental of less than 30 consecutive days. And the city first established STR regulations in 2018 that provided operational permit application and revocation requirements and enforcement provisions. It was later updated in 2023 to impose a cap of 150 STR permits citywide at any given time. And the ordinance also clarified that junior accessory dwelling units could not be used as STRs, and align the timing of permit renewals with business licenses. Thank you. The City Council held, just to kind of give the brief background, the City Council held 4 study sessions on the STR program in 2024, which included presentations from staff and policy discussions about the current program, impacts on neighborhoods and housing availability and implementation. The City Council directed the city manager to prepare a revised ordinance on specific policies, which are reflected in the ordinance before you this evening. Next slide, please. And it's working. In January of this year, the Planning Commission held a public hearing and considered the draft ordinance. The Planning Commission adopted a resolution recommending approval with a number of revisions. That ordinance went to City Council in February, where they held a hearing and considered it and continued it, and it went back for further deliberations and policy direction and was continued back to the Council in May. Oops. At the May meeting, the City Council directed the city manager to prepare a revised ordinance based on some specific policy changes. Some of those were substantive, which is why it's coming back to you this evening for review and consideration. And I also wanted to note that the City Council accepted all but one of the Planning Commission's recommendations, which I'll highlight through when we talk through the changes, but that was related to parking. The changes fall into these 6 code sections: definitions, standards applicable to short-term rentals, permit requirements, operational requirements, violations and enforcement, and the application of the ordinance. The City Council added a definition of natural person, amended the definition of operator to include natural person, and then some conforming edits throughout the ordinance, and changed the definition of hosted STR to remove accessory dwelling units, as well as conforming edits throughout. So that included in the applicable standards, removing the allowance for operators of hosted STRs to reside within an accessory dwelling unit and operate an STR out of the primary dwelling. They also added a requirement for proof of insurance and requiring inspections for all STRs, so whether they're hosted or unhosted, and adding life safety, pool spas, and lighted ingress and egress, and requiring a separate fee for inspections. Under the operational requirements, they added some clarifications under responsible party, including adding a response time of 30 minutes to complaints. Under required information to be provided to guests to include composting, reducing the number of nights per year for unhosted STRs from 90 to 60 nights, modifying the STR occupancy to exclude children under the age of 6, so changing that from under the age of 12. Council also directed to follow their original direction of a citywide standard. And that was the one recommendation from the commission that they asked to change. And then also added platform accountability, where the advertising platform would be responsible to review that the city permit has been obtained. Under violations and enforcement, they added a private right of action. And under the application of ordinance, made some clarifying edits that the ordinance must be certified by the California Coastal Commission. And then finally, I wanted to read this change into the record. The council had provided this direction to include visitor hours, which had inadvertently been left out of the draft. So we read this into the record at the February city council meeting, and I forgot to add it to the draft ordinance. Anyway, it is added now in the draft, and I'm just going to read it into the record. And so in addition to the maximum number of short-term renters allowed, the number of guests and visitors allowed at any time in a short-term rental shall not exceed 1/2 of the maximum short-term rentals allowed, and visited hours are limited to 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. So the recommendation, staff's recommendation tonight is based on the policy direction provided by the City Council. Staff recommends the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing and consider the changes directed by Council, find the text amendment exempt from CEQA, and adopt a resolution to recommend approval. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Director Updegrave. Does anyone have questions for staff before we open the public hearing?
Yeah, so I'm looking over, and I could just be missing this, could be in the wrong place, but in the definitions section, it doesn't, this might be a little persnickety, but I did notice this in a public comment. It doesn't seem like there is a distinction between visitor and guest in definitions. Am I missing that somewhere?
Thank you, Commissioner Devine. I don't believe there is a definition of guest. I'll have to look, but there are, I don't know if there's a definition, so I will look to verify that. But there are occupancy requirements related to like the number of renters based on the bedroom. So during public comment, I'll look and find where that is in the ordinance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Davis.
So I was going to ask something similar, and I saw a lot of public comments about it as well, that quiet time be defined. So we've now defined visitor hours, which I think is great. We define pool hours, which I think is wonderful. But I think quiet time leaves an ambiguity that some people might not be comfortable with. And it seems like if we're defining times, it might be worthwhile to define that one as well.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Davis, did you have a question? Or just a comment?
I think that's an excellent point, and we can cover it during deliberations.
Okay. Wonderful.
Does anyone else have questions for staff?
Actually, I did have another one. on packet page 67, paragraph 4, and maybe there's not a distinction between ADU and JADU, maybe they're used interchangeably, but in that instance where you used it, you only used the junior ADU designation and didn't include the ADU. So I was just looking for clarification on that.
Which packet page is that?
Packet page 67, paragraph 4.
There was a clarification made that the limitations apply to ADUs and JADUs. So that's just describing the clarification that was made in the staff report. So the clarification added JADUs.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, and then I had another one, clarification, and maybe I'm misinterpreting this again, I don't know. On packet page 69, paragraph 1, under the general plan analysis, it states that the owner can live in the ADU or JADU and rent the primary residence as an STR, and we're changing that very thing. So it's stated as though it's current in that analysis, and even though the change is being made in the ordinance, which is ultimately what's really important, and I'm not trying to be nitpicky about it, but it's misleading and it puts a conflict in the record that the changes are, it's in conflict with the changes that are being made in the ordinance.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. It looks like that wasn't updated from the previous, so I'll go through and make sure that's not in the resolution. And if it's in the resolution, I can propose some strike language there.
Great. Thank you so much.
I don't see any other questions. Go ahead, Commissioner Ferguson.
I'm going to hold my comments to after public comment, I think.
Okay. My question kind of was similar to what Commissioner Davis just said. Under primary residence, we've redefined it to say that it shall not include accessory dwelling units. Was there a reason that it was just, would there be a clarification that it also wouldn't include junior accessory dwelling units, just because we've drawn a distinction between the two in other parts of the ordinance?
Let me look in the ordinance itself.
It's on packet page 81, definition M. There's a sentence that was added that says primary residence shall not include an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah. So I believe in the original draft ordinance that came to you, it was JADUs were not eligible for that. So an owner couldn't live in a JADU and rent the primary dwelling. I believe it just applied to ADUs, and so I think that's why that was pulled in that manner. You're asking about the definition of hosted, the change to the definition of hosted?
Yeah, well, I
primary
think it
residence?
makes, I like the addition that primary residence shall not include an accessory dwelling unit. And I think it would follow that primary residence would also not include a junior accessory dwelling unit. I just think it needs to be clarified further. But if again, we can save this for deliberation, but it was more of a question.
I think that's a possible change.
Okay.
Yes, that's a possible change.
Okay. Okay, seeing no more questions, we are going to go to public comment. Reminder that folks will have 3 minutes, and I will call the first 3 folks to speak. So I have first Gary Furlong, then Cindy Abbott, and then Bob O'Donnell.
First, I'd like to thank the commissioners for the time and effort that you put into being commissioners. It is an incredible sacrifice of your personal lives, and I appreciate it deeply. In consideration of the STR ordinance that's being revised, I would like to again, as has already been mentioned, say that there definitely needs to be a definition of what a guest is in an STR. Secondly, I would go so far as to say there also needs to be a definition of what we mean by hosted and unhosted. The new ordinance makes a clear distinction between hosted and unhosted without actually defining what the difference is. The simplest solution is to require that a host be present every night that the STR is rented as hosted. To some, this might seem burdensome for a homeowner, but we're not talking about homeowners in this case. We're talking about business owners. So a definition of host as someone who is actually there at night when it is rented out would be applicable in this situation. Third, I would remind the commissioners that you'll be signing your name to this document, or the commission will be as a whole. And as such, it's important that this document not only be thoughtful, but also be reliable. On packet pages 74 and 75 are several statements extolling the wonders of STRs, which could easily have come from an ad by Airbnb, except for the fact that these statements are incorrect and misleading. Instead, these statements should point out that the ordinance is being revised because unhosted STRs have gutted our neighborhoods of character, have caused great grief among our residents, have made the housing shortage worse, have reduced customers in stores that serve residents, such as dry cleaners, banks, health clubs, banks, hardware stores, and others, and have robbed our school system of students. I have to wonder, when you look at those sections, if you'll read them, did Airbnb actually write this section, or was it a staff member? Finally, in regards to proof of residency, packet page 83 lists some documents that can show proof of residency, but also says documentation can include, but is not limited to these documents. I strongly encourage you to specifically require certain documents to show proof of residency rather than allow that to be made by a staff member at the time the application is made. Because frankly, putting the staff member in a position of having to work with a person and say, well, this document's okay, this one's not okay, that takes too much time, it's too much pressure, our staff has other things to do. So please look at the documentation requirement for proof of residency and come up with specific documents that must be shown at the time of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy Abbott, followed by Bob O'Donnell, and then Gary, I think this says Chinoa.
Oh, excuse me. You can go ahead. You're right there. Am I out of order?
That's okay. You may go.
Okay. Sorry about the confusion. Madam Chair and Planning Commissioner members, my name is Bob O'Donnell, 52-year resident here in Pacifica. I've never ran a marathon, but I almost feel like all of us have been in a marathon over the last 3 years. It's been a long haul, and I particularly want to thank the Planning Commission and the City Council for listening and responding to the citizens who have brought the unintended consequences of the current ordinance to you. It really has impacted in a very heavy way our communities and our neighborhoods, and I think you've responded. The new language that the council sent back to you is strong and supportive of a more effective ordinance. Particularly the 60-day limit, I think, is very important. The increasing accountability that you're going to provide to these properties. And I would also point out, I was glad to see the language about the 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. We need to strengthen that to control some of the out-of-control situations that are occurring. But overall, I want to thank you as a Planning Commission and the Council also. I want you to send a good, strong ordinance back to the Council for final approval. I think we're mile 23 or 24 right now. We're not yet 26, but pretty soon we're going to be at mile 26, and we'll all be able to say we ran a marathon very successfully and very providentially for the community. So thank you for your service, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you. Cindy, followed by Gary, and then Peggy O'Donnell.
I have a handout here, and there's enough for staff as well as for all the commissioners.
They're the same.
Pass that
Okay.
out to them.
Thanks, Cindy. Do you have any for the back?
No. I put some in the back.
Okay, you have some. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Cindy Abbott, and I'm also really excited to be here because we are getting really close to reclaiming our residential neighborhoods. As you've heard, it's been 3 really long years since we've been engaged in this broad community-based campaign. And we really appreciate all of the time that you've put into it and City Council. And it's not been about one or two bad actors. It's about reclaiming our residential neighborhoods and having them be available for long-term residency. What I handed out to you was in my public comments, or the majority of what is in public comments. But I too am really concerned after this long journey that we've had together that there's over 12 points about the wonderful benefits of short-term rentals. When you've heard from the community the pain and difficulty that they've been creating and the loss of our neighborhoods, kids, people attending service businesses, volunteering, and yet there's really nothing about that in the resolution and the findings. There's one point about that. So what I've shared with you was what was in my written public comment submitted before noon today, with suggestions of some deletions and some things to add into this to really talk about why we are updating this ordinance. It does not reflect in the resolution and the findings why we have come here and make the strong point that needs to be in this legal document about the need for this extensive update. And one of the things that I'm suggesting here is item 4C, by the way, is a really strange addition about the benefits of short-term rentals being part of mixed land uses, and that they provide a broader mix of revenue-generating transient occupancy uses. Where did that come from? It kind of reminds me of how all of a sudden ADUs were slipped in as a possibility of having an ADU be an offset to somebody being in the main house. So I suggest striking that mixed land use policy because hopefully all of the new properties that are being developed that we're looking at are long-term residential housing, particularly affordable housing. So I wanted to hand you this in a copy to, review and look at as you're talking, because you've made decisions before about improved and enhanced findings, and that's what this is all about, making sure that it's clear why this ordinance is needed. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, Gary Chinoa, followed by Peggy O'Donnell, and then Molly Muller.
Good evening. I'd like to first thank the Planning Commission for all the hard work and dedication they've put into this ordinance and these resolutions. And I strongly support them and urge them to pass it on to the City Council and that we should get this done. It's been a long road. We're close to the end, and I think it's time we get it in place. I also support the quiet time from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. because as the unfortunate neighbor of an STR, sometimes you have to get up and go to work, sometimes you have appointments, and when you have people that don't care about the neighborhood or the neighbors, and they can stay up all night with music, carrying on to parties, I think that's a very important one to push. So once again, I thank the Planning Commission, and I urge you to get this done and pass it on to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Peggy O'Donnell, and then Molly Muller, and then Lila Ranero.
Madam Chairman and the Planning Commission, my name is Peggy O'Donnell, and this is actually the first meeting that I've attended because I've heard many complaints about the problem in Pacifica, but it was fairly recently that we became personally affected when the house next door to us sold last September. It was advertised as a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom home, and it sold for over $1,950,000. We have no idea who bought the home. There's nobody, no one ever came around and introduced themselves. Nobody lives there. But immediately, construction workers came in, did major renovations, must have put in a room downstairs, and it's now on multiple STR websites, advertises a 6-bedroom, 3-bathroom home that sleeps 16. So I think it was first rented on Airbnb in February, and looking today, there's already 12 reviews. So pretty much every weekend, it's a party. You know, we've had corporate groups doing team building activities with their matching shirts, doing, many groups. And one of the primary problems we've had, besides noise, is garbage. You know, they have 3 massive bins that are put out each week, but I've looked out and we had crows going into plastic bags that they just put next to the garbage bin because they produce so much filth, and then garbage blowing across, through the hedge onto our property. And I went to look, there were crows on the fence, and there were pizza boxes stacked a mile high on top of the bins in their side yard. So I've reached out, directly through Airbnb to the host or whatever, who, I'm sorry, but, so anyway, we're personally affected. The house on our other side just sold for $1,700,000, and all our neighbors are hoping it's not another short-term rental. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Molly Muller, followed by Lila Renero, and then Caitlin Quinn.
Hello, everyone. This is all new to me too. I am the other side of the neighbor for that same house that Peggy was talking about. So it's 2,850 square feet, 6 bedrooms, 3 baths. It's advertised as 16 plus people. And I'm just here to tell you how I feel as a person on the other side, having to live in it. There's a pool table in the house and everything reverberates. You can hear them when they play pool. They have a barbecue outside, which is, I guess, pretty standard, but it's just the thing about not knowing who's gonna show up. We've had birthday parties, we've had weddings, we've had retreats, and it's the same thing. It's like, okay, who do we have coming in today? It's just, there's a definite creepy element, because when people are coming out their house, they're looking right directly into our backyard. And it's just, and the sound, because of where the valley is, it really reverberates and you can hear everything. And I think it's, when they come in, they think that, this is my time and I'm gonna have a big old whatever, a party. But it's a residential area. It's not a resort. It's not a venue to have these things. It's not a ballroom where you can just go and have, 16 plus people. The cars, there's 2 in the garage, 3 in the driveway, 2 in the front of the house, 7 cars, sometimes more. So it's just, it's not the idea of when I first came to Pacifica and found this house and I fell in love with it because there's trees, and we were both so happy, and now I've got this next door. It's like, this isn't what I signed up for. So again, going back to, let's bring it back to being residential, and if you can get it down to the 60 days, that would be beneficial for the neighbors. We worked really hard to get this house, and we love our quiet time. And that's why we love it back here. The street is great. So just to keep that in mind about seeing our side as the homeowner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Lila Renero, followed by Caitlin Quinn, and then Brian Renero.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. This draft ordinance is mainly strong, and it could benefit from a few minor changes, which many of the other speakers have touched on. For proof of primary residence, the draft ordinance states documentation can include, but is not limited to, proof of homeowner's tax exemption, voter registration card or certificate, or proof of vehicle registration. This should be clearer. The school district requires driver's license or ID card plus 2 additional pieces of documentation, so a total of 3. When I enroll my kids in school, it shouldn't be more difficult than to operate an unhosted STR. The agenda packet portrays a bias towards STR operators. The last several pages of the packet include a letter from a representative from Pacifica for Responsible Tourism. Note their group's name is not Pacificans. I question why this letter has been given airtime and not anything from the many citizens and neighbors who have been dealing with the nightmares of living in proximity of an unhosted STR. The final pages of the agenda packet include a copy and pasted quotes from guests of one individual STR. To be more balanced, the agenda packet should have included the sentiments of the many Pacificans who've been negatively affected. There are many conversations on local social media focusing on the pain that residents feel about living near out-of-control unhosted party pads. Nowhere on any of these posts does anyone say, gee, I wish I lived next door to an Airbnb. Since 2019, when the house across the street from us was sold to out-of-town members of a corporation, we have been under siege dealing with issues related to the STR, similar to other speakers that have come before you. Guests trying to enter our property, overflowing garbage, parking that blocks access for emergency vehicles, overtly hostile visitors who have thrown debris at our house. The owners even hired a lawyer who sent us letters threatening to take legal action because we had the temerity to call the police on their guests who were wreaking havoc in our quiet neighborhood. They don't live here, and they don't care about the neighborhood one bit. We shouldn't have to feel dread every time a for sale sign goes up in our neighborhood. Anyhow, thanks for your time and your help on this important issue. We're in the home stretch. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Caitlin, and then Brian, and then Albert Zhang.
Hello, good evening, councilors. Thank you so much for your time and for your efforts on this. I know this has been a long haul, and I am completely exhausted, and hopefully we can put this to bed very soon. In your package, you're going to see there's a number of letters that talk about the need for tightening up the definition of a hosted STR that specifically says that the host is on site during the evening hours. I'm not going to belabor this here, but I'll just say I've had many, many conversations with municipalities and citizens in cities all across California and across the country who have similar ordinances in place of what we're looking on passing. And the one thing I hear over and over again is the lying about a hosted STR, an unhosted STR being hosted. And I just want us to tighten up these loopholes because contrary to what you may hear from some STR operators tonight, we have no shortage of bad actor STR operators in our city. I live next door to another one of the STRs, that's unhosted STRs, that's operated by the same company that Lila Ranero lives next to. We've also been threatened by lawyers. I have got, 3 years ago, this corporation bought my neighbor's home. I have literally an 11-page single-space document listing all the dates and times of how many times we've been woken up, trespassing issues, parties, you name it, garbage being dumped in our bins. I can probably count maybe a dozen nights since 3 years that we've actually had peace in our home, that somebody has not been renting over there, and we're able to just like breathe a sigh of relief. And it is never on a weekend, and it is never on a major holiday. Every single weekend, every single major holiday in our lives has been impacted for 3 whole years since then. And I want to say, we're going to hear lots of fear-mongering from the STR operators. Oh, but the TOT, oh, but this, oh, but that. Okay, what's the price tag we put on peace of mind? What's the price tag we put on community? Hey, when I do my math, knowing how many times this thing is operated next to me, I figure the city's making $18,000, $20,000 a year in business license, short-term rental permit, and TOT. You know what? I am a member of a single-family income that comes from a nonprofit. I've been at the point where I will pay the city the $18,000 somewhere in my budget so I don't have to live like this anymore. Thank you for passing this ordinance with a 60-night limit and all of the other incredibly sensible and robust restrictions in place so I can have peace again, and so many other neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, Brian Monero, followed by Albert Zhang, and then Dion Emerson.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. I'm not exhausted. I found this process invigorating, and I feel full of vim and vigor. I think we can all be proud that what we've gotten to at this point is something that's specific. The devil's in the details. We're down in the details phase. And it was something where, obviously, for whatever reason, staff and the city manager wanted to put in biased language and give certain operators and business operators a privileged position by having their messaging going out in the public packet before other public comment. Despite that, we can be proud that Pacificans raised their voices, worked within the system, and we've got an ordinance in front of you commissioners that reflects their wants and desires, that preserves our community, preserves our housing. So I'm very proud that you were part of the process too. I'll just say the details here are the same that my colleagues had also raised. It's important that we have a conforming edit to page 68, where it's clear that the ADUs are not intended to be used as a primary residence, or as a spot that the owner can reside in at the site while the primary residence is rented out. Loopholes exist, and we have to stamp them out. And so I think we're very, very close to a very strong and robust ordinance, which is, of course, important because what we're doing is we're also preventing something very bad from happening. These businesses will not voluntarily comply with our stated laws, passive laws. They've demonstrated that before. Otherwise, we would be collecting more TOT tax, right? They avoid that. They avoid compliance with the building codes. We've seen that for years on end. There are STRs operating within walking distance of these chambers that have unpermitted, uninspected habitable space right now that they're renting out. And this prevents that from going forward. Why is that important? In addition to the loss of quality of life in Pacifica, in addition to the loss of housing opportunities and rental opportunities to the folks in Pacifica, these STRs operate in dangerous fashion. And this has been the part that I've been very passionate about. There's going to be a fire. There's going to be a panic. There will not be panic hardware on the doors. These doors will not be fire rated. And this house may never have been inspected where there's 16, accommodate 16, and then a visitor of maybe double that amount during a party. Suddenly, something happens at the party, a fire goes off, beer pong starts a fight, and people get stampede towards the door. What if there's an ADA, there's no ADA in compliance? What if there's a person there that does not have the capability of egressing the building? What happens to that person? This is a ticking clock. This is going to happen if we do not pass this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Albert Zhang, followed by Dion Emerson, and then I have one card for Geraldo Dolphin, but there's no item selected. I'm assuming it's this one, so I will call you last.
We finally have good weather today. Hope you all enjoy weather today. So my name is Albert Zhang. My husband and I are proud resident of Pacifica. We occasionally rent out our home as an unhosted Airbnb, and we do our best to provide guests with a positive experience in our beautiful home beach town. We will never had a complaint from our neighbors. They all know about our Airbnb, and they fully support it. At the previous city council meeting and planning commissioner meetings, my fellow hosts and I have shared extensive research and data to highlight the positive impact of responsible short-term rentals. We've shown our commitment to working with the city to develop a balanced ordinance, one that addresses concerns while still allowing good operators to continue hosting and contributing valuable tax revenue to the city. Unfortunately, the current ordinance does not reflect that balance. I understand the concern from those opposed to STRs. I wouldn't want to live next to a rental that constantly creates disturbance, either like the two previous residents who live next to the Airbnb who can host 16 plus people. But that's not our case. And it's not the case for any of the members in our group, Pacifica for Responsible Tourism. We have more than 50 people hosting our group, and we take pride in being respectful, responsible hosts who care deeply about our community. The city has said it wants to discourage corporate STR owners, but this ordinance seems to punish the very people who aren't the problem. Individual homeowners like us, who make up the majority of STRs in Pacifica, if the goal is to prevent corporate dominance while small, responsible hosts bearing the brunt of restrictions. It feels like the city and the opposition are picking up the wrong fight. We are not the problem, but we are the ones being pushed out. All we are asking for is a fair chance, the policy that targets bad actors, not responsible neighbors. Please don't let this misinformation, for example, when we have 150 cap STRs, we have over 15,000 homes in Pacifica, drive a decision that could unfairly impact residents like us who are simply trying to share our homes, support local tourism, and contribute to the community. We urge you to reconsider this ordinance and provide the City Council's opinion to modify it, especially the 6 days restriction. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, Dion Emerson.
Good evening, Diane Emerson. Thank you, Planning Commissioners, for the time and effort you're putting into this. I do have a perspective to share, which is a little different, which is the before and after perspective about having a short-term rental. Fortunately, about 6 months ago, the short-term rental across the street from us stopped operating and was sold to a lovely young couple in their 30s who are now living across the street in our neighborhood. But prior to that, we had about a year and a half's worth of absolute hell like other folks here, including noise, garbage, disruption, and we live on a very small cul-de-sac. So all of these issues are accentuated when you're dealing with parking, garbage, disruptive people having parties, everything from parties to baby showers and gender reveal parties. So without belaboring those kinds of things, I do just want to point out that the impact to the community is significant, and I can really say that from the experience of having before and the last 6 months without that Airbnb across the street has been an incredible gift to all of our neighbors in that area. The last thing I would just kind of want to add is whatever needs to be strengthened, and I apologize for not having that specific, in terms of the quiet hour issue, I think is critically important. Because if there's anything that will set people off and the way our neighborhoods are laid out with the way sound carries, that the noise issue is probably one of the most significant and probably the police department's least favorable thing to have to go deal with at night. So I would just urge that you all take a really specific look at the noise issue. And again, I'm really looking forward to, not for me personally anymore since we don't have the STR across the street, but to have a new day in Pacifica where we reclaim our neighborhoods. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Geraldo Dalton, followed by Mark Steckbart, and that's the last speaker card I have.
Good evening. My name is Geraldo Dalton. I live right here at Pacific Avenue. I'm a father of 2 young boys, and one of them, his name is Gabriel, and he goes to Valimar. He's 8 years old, and he loves to play outside. We have a little basketball hoop in there. One of the things that concerns me the most is that basically 40 yards from each other, we have 2 STRs in our street, and there's always large groups of people coming in and out, right? And as a parent, right, when a 7-year-old or 8-year-old boy that wants to play outside all the time, and you have all these groups coming in and out, it is a concern for me and my wife, right? We cannot always be outside with him, and so that's becoming an issue. And today, coming in here, I invite the City Council to just drive by my street. There's a large group that just arrived at the at a Martabella Lane house. It's on Pacific Avenue in Buckingham. There's about like 5 cars that are parked in there. 2 of them were driving on the wrong side of the road, and I took a picture, and the cars are probably still there driving on the wrong side of the road. So maybe you guys can drive by and see. Maybe they might have a party tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mark Steckbart.
I would like to concur with a prior comment about the fact that it's laudatory language in the staff report about the benefits of SDRs are fabricated out of whole cloth and should be ignored. Staff is pro-SDR. They're going to pimp our neighborhoods as long as you let them. I would also suggest that staff is walking you into a trap. Everybody talks about noise, pool noise, quiet time. Well, if staff was competent, they'd direct you to Chapter 10, Title 5 of current Pacifica ordinances that says this: it shall be unlawful for any person to make or continue or cause to be made or continued any loud, disturbing, unnecessary, unusual noise, which a noise disturbs, injures, endangers the comfort, health, repose, peace, and safety of other persons within the city, 24/7. It's got nothing to do with 10 o'clock. In my neighborhood, we don't make any noise after 2, and if they do, we're invited. So the issue is, do you want McDonald's level intensity in the neighborhoods, or do you want peace and quiet? So I'm going to tell everybody in our database of 500 people to use Chapter 10 and call the cops repeatedly. Drive the cops crazy, but they will have to do it. It's Pacifica Municipal Ordinance. We use this in the house across the street from us. Over 2 years, 23% of all complaints came from that address. We never got a hearing. We never got any indication from staff and code enforcement that they were doing anything to lock that property down. It should have been pulled years ago, and it wasn't. In closing, the unintended consequences are dramatic, and you got to start paying attention. You have to reflect on your personal residence if you want 5 or 7 cars parked in front of your house all weekend, not moving, or moving at midnight. Do you want that to happen? Do you want noise at 9:30 and then miraculously it gets quiet at 10? Or do you want it quiet at 2? I would suggest 2. So don't talk about pool noise. Talk about no noise off the perimeter, ever, for any reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have anyone with a raised hand on Zoom?
Chair, we have one raised hand this time.
Okay, I'll take that last comment.
Cliff Lawrence, you may go ahead and unmute yourself.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I would echo and endorse most of what I've heard tonight about fixing up this specificity, the definitions. But one other thing caught my attention. You say you've got a 6-bedroom unit that equates to 16. That's a formula I'm not familiar with. Real estate formula is 2 in each bedroom plus 1 in the living room. So I don't know how you get to 16. I don't know if there's any code that relates to that. But why you're doing this sounds like a good idea. The fact that the packet seems to be prejudiced, it's not a good thing to hear. And I hope that if that is a tendency we're having, we look into it, because it doesn't seem to represent what you're having presented to you tonight. But I do thank you for all your work. This has been quite an effort. In the main, I'm quite pleased with what you have, and I want to thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Cliff. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Would anyone like to start? Clarifying questions, deliberation?
Yeah, I've got some clarifying questions. But first of all, to acknowledge all the commenters tonight. Several of you live in the same neighborhoods we do. Some of you actually have been in my immediate neighbors at different times. We're talking about the same rentals that are my neighbors also, so I understand where the sentiment is coming from. It does feel, as I read this, that it's sort of a overly legislative way to get rid of all STRs in Pacifica, if I'm honest. If I owned an STR and read this ordinance, I would consider converting it. So if that was the goal, I think we're there. I have some questions for staff on some clarifications before we move forward. I was hoping for some clarification on the health and safety inspections. It gives a brief list of a few hot topics, but is there like a checklist inspection that's been created, or is that something to be fleshed out later? Could you give just a little more detail what a health and safety inspection is, what it entails, and who conducts it?
Thank you, Commissioner Ferguson. So those inspections will be conducted by our building inspectors, and we'll check for the basic life safety elements, and so the council asked that we add that clarification.
At what frequency?
I believe it's required with the application or prior to approval.
So just once at the beginning? Okay.
But it would be every year, so the permits expire at the end of the year and have to be renewed.
Is that in the ordinance that it's every year?
Yes, it's under the permit requirements.
So the permits only last, their duration is 1 year. And
So with each renewal, it would,
right,
it would
exactly.
recur. Okay.
So at renewal, the applicant will have to basically go through the same process to file the same documents, get the inspection, all of those things will have to be done again.
And then, I guess a point of clarification, when I look at the fee structure for the violations, there are first, second, and third offense fees listed, but it also says the second offense involves a revocation of the license. So I just wanted to clarify, second offense is the revocation, or fourth offense is the revocation. It says second, but we have a third violation fee. I was unclear if that's because an offense, it's considered a new offense for the second day of the same offense, and the second offense in this case is a actually separate offense and not just another day delay on the original offense.
So thank you, Commissioner Ferguson, for that question. So each and every day that a violation continues, it's a new violation. So typically you will impose a fine for the first day of the violation. If it continues to the second day, then a second fine, and so on. And so, and as indicated, there's a revocation ability for the city, and those would be separate. So a fine can be imposed and a revocation can be pursued.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the clarification. So let's say in this case that they have some kind of a life safety issue, which there's two separate fee structures, something that takes more than 24 hours to resolve as a homeowner. Maybe the building isn't rented those 24 hours, but it takes time to procure a contractor and fix whatever the issue is. Are we saying that that one issue, as it goes into a second day, becomes a second issue and becomes a second violation, causes revocation, or it has to be separate incidents?
I think I understand what you're saying. No, so if there's a first violation similar to what you mentioned as an example, we would give them an opportunity to correct. And so if they correct within that time period that we've given them.
That 24 hours.
Well, it has to be a reasonable period. So whatever the reasonable period.
It says for every day since notice of violation in the ordinance.
Right, but so if we've identified a violation and we've issued a notice to correct, we're not going to issue another violation notice until that period, that opportunity to correct has expired.
Okay.
And then once that opportunity to correct has expired, then we may impose a fee, a fine, or take some other action, which may include revocation.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I don't read it that way, but I'll allow
I can reread it and make sure that the language flows. Is there a particular section?
Yeah, I'm trying to call it right now. I'll look it up and get back to you.
Okay, great, yeah.
In the same vein, who is the enforcement officer? We've talked about who, is that also a building inspector? There's no definition to it anywhere.
The code enforcement that falls under the Community Development Department is the one who does code enforcement on short-term rentals.
Understood. You okay if I keep going?
Please.
And then I'll just wait for some clarification on the third violation for health and safety. Either that should probably just be removed, or we change the fee structure to make the third what the second is.
Commissioner Ferguson, can you tell me exactly what section you're referring to?
Yes, it is on packet page 91, paragraph C. Sorry, this is paragraph D.
D, okay.
1,500 for initial violation of chapter, $3,000 for a second violation of the same provision within 1 year, $5,000 for each subsequent violation.
Right. And you're saying that that should be removed, the third?
If the second violation involved automatically creates a revocation of the permit, I don't see how a third violation can exist, but that could mean operating without a license. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, so that could be the situation, and the city would still want to be able to impose that third tier of fine?
Sure.
Regardless of whether or not we've revoked the license? Does that make sense?
It does. I didn't see language in here for a fee structure for operating without a license intentionally, right? These are for, this fee seems to apply to people within the program. If we're, if you catch somebody who's, say, listed on an Airbnb or VRBO, never applies for a license, never pays the fees, what's the recourse for that?
Right, so if you continue on that subsection D, that last sentence says, operation of a short-term rental without a permit or violations of any of the provisions of this article shall be deemed to pose a threat to public health or safety.
Triggering that fee structure from paragraph D.
Yeah.
Great.
And these tiers, these three tiers, are taken from state law. And so we, Government Code Section 36900D.
Understood.
And so I think it's important to mimic that tier structure in case we need it. But I hear what you're saying, that, we should be revoking after the second, so why would we need it? But there could be.
I just want to be clear on it since we're signing off on it. There's a.
Commissioner Ferguson, I just want to make sure that we're tracking what the actual action item is. So I feel like, are you looking for a clarification in
I was looking for a
section?
clarification. I was satisfied with her answer.
Do you want a clarification that this is an addition to and not in a replacement of revocation? I don't know if it's necessary. I want to make sure that you guys are.
I'm okay. Because you could revoke the license and still have additional fees if they continue to operate, or, yeah.
Okay.
It makes sense to me. I guess, I don't even know how to frame the questions, but the packet page 92, where it goes into an aggrieved residence, that was an addition from the latest round of the city council. I don't see any sort of burden of proof or burden of fact on the aggrieved residents. It says that they have to report it to the city, and then if the city chooses, or even the city investigates and finds no reason to implement fines or prosecute, then it's within their right under our city code to, I guess, try to recover the fee structure that's listed here. It says they're entitled to attorney's fees and damages, but is the intention that they would then pursue these fees personally?
They wouldn't pursue the fees. What that section allows is, or subsection H, allows an aggrieved resident, as it's defined, to bring an action in court to enforce the provisions of the article. And so they could be entitled to recover reasonable costs and attorney's fees if they are deemed the prevailing party in that action by the court.
Okay. Seems like that would already exist under California law, but that's fine. One last question, which just follows right afterwards, is there's some responsibilities for the advertising platforms. I was curious if staff actually received any commitments from these platforms to do all of these actions that it's saying that the advertising agencies have to do.
Samantha. So I'm not aware of any commitment by any platforms to comply with that section. In the past, we've worked with a couple platforms on enforcement issues, but I am not aware of any
It's my understanding that
discussions.
didn't go very well.
I'm not involved in those discussions personally, so I don't know, but I'm not aware of any communication specifically from any platforms on this additional language.
Thank you, Commissioner Ferguson. This is also still a draft ordinance, and so I think the primary outreach is going to happen after it's adopted.
Okay. That's all I've got for now.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ferguson.
I just got one. I understand there's at least some people, or one person asserted that 23% of the complaints were generated by one address, and to their knowledge, the police haven't dealt with them. Do we have any record of how many police hours a year in the past 7 years we've had this have been spent on short-term ordinance enforcement or investigation?
Thank you, Commissioner Godwin. I do not believe we have that information.
Yeah, I'm personally somewhat concerned that if we're not enforcing the pretty lax rules we have now and the police department is not increasing in size, where's the manpower or police power going to come to enforce more rigorous rules? And has any thought been given to that question?
That would be a deliberation for the City Council.
Okay, I'm done.
Okay. Commissioner Redfield.
I had one, it may seem like an in-the-weeds kind of thing with all this, so much that's in here, but it was about the trash requirements. It's been a public comment on several occasions, and it actually says on packet page 87 in section D that the operator must provide the following materials electronically to any short-term renters before arrival and make available printed materials at the site for the guests for the following information. And then further downward, it's actually redline composting that we added at one of our meetings. It doesn't specify. I think it should be rather important thing. We all know if we miss trash day, it's a really bad day. So it doesn't state, you must go out. Like if your pickup is Monday, it's got to go out Sunday night. And that's been a common thing, especially with birds and the winds and all that good stuff that we get. Can that be somehow added in there that specifically that the information that the operator needs to provide when that is? It's rather ambiguous in there that they need to provide the information, but it doesn't specifically state that. And any overflow, that in my view, there should be a penalty on the operator to monitor that very closely, because again, we all know if you've ever been, subject to your neighbor's can blowing over some type of issue like that. One of the commenters specifically stated, excess pizza boxes and trash overflow, which will not be picked up, in my experience, with recology. Everything must be in the can, lid must be closed, et cetera. So just some clarifying in that information that the operator is supposed to provide, I think is a rather important issue. Overflow should have a penalty on the operator, so that needs to be clarified, in my opinion, by the operator to the renter, that is not acceptable, and possibly the city can impose a fee, or I don't know if the operator is allowed to impose a fee in their contract. So that's it. I think it's an important issue. We all know what the conditions are if trash isn't picked up or it's excess. It makes a mess for everybody involved.
Commissioner Redfield, do you have a suggestion of what you'd like to see added and where?
Possibly, I said just any excess trash that
In this section D?
in this section D. Yeah, so the information where it says make available printed materials, and I think it needs to be a specific to, to the trash issue, because it is clearly an issue. That could be clarified by the operator in their printed materials that they provide to the renter.
Right. So Chair Hauser, if I may.
Please.
So I think, Commissioner Redfield, that it could be as simple, and let me know if you agree, as adding and trash, composting, and recycling disposal requirements and specific date of trash, composting, and recyclable pickup.
Specific date and time.
Date and time.
Again, if your pickup is Monday and, they wake up at, 7 a.m. or whatever and it's checkout day, well, it's usually too late. If they think it's Monday to roll it out, you're most likely going to miss it.
Okay.
It has to go out the night before.
Right.
And obviously secured. They can't have excess trash outside the bin, which is what everybody has to follow. But that needs to be clarified to the renter. That may be easy for them to do where they come from. It may be their collector may pick up excess trash. But that clarification needs to be, I think, in the language needs to be in there.
I think it's a good edit. Does anyone disagree? Okay, seeing consensus.
I had
Commissioner
one other
Godwin.
small comment.
Is it on this?
Yes.
Okay, because I want to stay on this as well.
Recology allows you to buy a second can for an additional fee. It might be well worthwhile to encourage people who are going to have a large group of people stay at their house, buy an additional trash can so the capacity matches the demand.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue into my question for Commissioner Redfield. So the advertising of how trash works is important, but subdivision S, which is page 89, talks about how the STR should comply with trash and recycling requirements. And Commissioner Godwin, if we want to suggest a second bin, this might be a good spot for it, or Commissioner Redfield, if you want to see some level of action or requirement more than just providing materials, I think this section also would need some fattening.
It's S.
Specifically, where are you looking? You said page 89?
Packet page 89, section S, which says, just for the public, short-term rental use shall comply with trash and recycling requirements and scheduled solid waste pickup days at least once per week. Trash and recycling containers shall be located to be readily accessible for servicing, but it just talks about placement, and it shall not be put in other places constituting a nuisance.
Right, I did read that as well. But yeah, it's scheduled requirements says, shall comply with, but that doesn't specifically state, in my opinion, a time specific in any excess trash, would not be acceptable. Somehow, I think that, trash and recycling containers shall be located, we all know, and also for the operator, assuming when they know their renter is going to leave the premises, theoretically, they're going to be there to clean up or check on the property, following day, that day, specifically. So those cans also, under city ordinance, they have to be behind a fence, off the street. I believe it's within 12 hours of pickup, something like that.
I'm not aware, I don't know offhand what the pickup requirements are, but I think addressing it, I think your concern, Commissioner Redfield, is that this has to be communicated to the guests. And that's important to you. And so I think if that's the issue, then I think the original location, which was in 4905D, may be appropriate. We could also add language to subsection S if you'd like to clarify further, but I think S just speaks to just more the operator's compliance with the trash and recycling requirements.
Yeah, I think it needs to be reiterated to the operator, the importance of it to the renter, if that makes sense.
Perhaps if there's a complaint, then the consequences, they are required to buy another, to pay for
Yeah,
another
so
bin.
if there is a complaint, then the city would likely enforce the garbage collection requirements in Chapter 5 of Title 6. And I think that those have different repercussions than the violations in this section.
Is that code section referenced somewhere within the ordinance?
Yes, so it's referenced in, I just had it, darn it. It's referenced in subsection H, 4905H.
Do we have a page?
The bottom of page
87.
87.
My concern is that, this directly, it diverts away from the ordinance to municipal code. And the likelihood of operators reading municipal code, that's a concern for me. I think the need to make things crystal clear, we have the opportunity to do it, we should just do it. And again, I'm not really sure, when you get your STR permit, are you provided with, for instance, what does the city provide you with? Do they provide you with, here's the ordinance, here's the municipal code, here's all these things? Doesn't really give you an excuse to make a mistake? Or is it like, hey, you go find it, figure it out? I guess that's a question. What are they currently, what resources are STR permit applicants, when approved, provided by the city?
Thank you, Commissioner Devine. I would have to look in that, I think, to answer specifically. All of the information is available online, and it is available as part of the application. But I can look specifically into what information they receive attached to their permit. One thing to consider is that the code changes, and so therefore it really is the responsibility of an applicant to know and understand what's in their permit
And just
and
for
to comply.
clarification, an ordinance like this will become part of the municipal code if passed.
It is, correct. That's correct.
They'll be together.
Okay, I just, this could be totally an unreasonable expectation, I will admit that. It does feel sometimes that we allow people to go on their own goose chases, and I'm just really concerned about our ability to enforce these things. I understand it's community development and all these things, but we went through this last time, and I understand I'm diverting away from the work tonight, but I still remain deeply concerned about community development's ability to actually enforce this, and if we have the resources and the staff to do that. So I'm just thinking, as we're going through this, I'm trying to think, how can we make this stupid-proof, right? Because we are already struggling so much to do what we're currently doing. And this is positive, but it also creates a lot more work. So how do we actually make sure that this is a tool that can be utilized?
$1,000 a day is pretty attractive to chase the fees.
Okay. Well, going back to the refuse question, I think instead of trying to recreate the wheel, I think it's smart that we are referencing what's already allowed in H. Are you guys comfortable with that? Yeah, okay.
So is it we're going in the direction of we wait for a violation before we require a second can?
I think, correct me if if I've mistaken this, Ms. Bizzano, but I think what City Attorney Bizzano has said is that there's a second subdivision that addresses trash more stringently than what we were talking about.
Okay.
That references Chapter 28 of our current municipal code, Chapter 10 and Chapter 28, which provide for higher levels of enforcement than just saying, get a second can.
Got it.
And to be clear, the enforcement could include both the STR ordinance and likely would include the violation under 4905H And then subsection would be whatever violation of Chapter 5 of Title 6 is, the garbage collection ordinance. So it would likely be both identified as the violation that needs to be corrected.
Not to mention the cans come in many sizes, as do the short-term rentals.
Yeah. So I think what I've heard is that Commissioner Redfield would like the change to what's provided to the occupant, and we've all agreed that that's a good change.
So if I could just repeat for clarity, Commissioner Redfield was requesting to add the date and time of pickup into section 4.4905D. And then is there a consensus on the Planning Commission for that?
Yes, I think I polled us, and I got a lot of head nods.
Okay.
So I think
Thank you,
we're
Chair
in good
Hauser.
shape. Was there anything else, Commissioner
Could I
Redfield?
just ask one more clarifying? I believe City Attorney Bizzano, that is an enforceable strike, if you will, on the operator for violation of the municipal ordinance for STRs and also a municipal code violation as well, separate from that. Is that correct? There could be potentially two violations for excess trash.
It could be potentially two, right, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to re-ask what I asked during questions, and I'm going to go through some of the ones from the community that I found particularly compelling. So on packet page 81, definition M, I would ask that we as a commission change the additional sentence to say primary residence shall not include an accessory dwelling unit or a junior accessory dwelling unit, just for clarity. I'm seeing lots of head nods.
Yes.
Okay. So that's one. And then I took as many notes as I kind of could, but everyone feel free to jump in. To Commissioner Devine's point and to one of the community members, I think we do need to add a definition of what a guest is and the discrepancy between guest and visitor, if there is one. It's very, to me, there's clearly a distinction, but I think they should be defined.
We can add a definition, but there's not a conflict in the code language, but we could certainly add
perfect
definition.
And
was
just,
there?
Sorry, excuse me.
Yes, sorry.
I apologize. Just so I understand it correctly, my assumption is that a guest is somebody who pays to book and stay in the Airbnb. A visitor is somebody that comes to the home to visit the guest, correct?
That is correct, Commissioner
Beautiful,
Devine.
thank you.
And was there consensus on adding those definitions?
Yes. Go ahead.
There is one more on the fee structure. It talks about an invitee, which I assume is a guest of the guest.
Lord. Maybe we can just universally, if you have a packet page, let's look at it.
91, paragraph A.
Paragraph, okay.
Occupant,
4909.
invitee, renter, leasee, or owner.
Oh, I mean, Ms. Bizzano, can you comment on this? I think this is legal language, and because it's not defined, it may have more of a.
Trying to find it. What page was that?
Packet page 91, paragraph A, the second line.
Yeah, so in that section, we're trying to cover all the potential names of people that could be at the location or could be issued a notice of violation. So we're trying to capture any type of language. And an invitee, as Chair Hauser mentioned, is a legal term of art.
Great.
Yeah.
Going back, I think it would be great if staff has clarification, but I concur that it should not be harder to enroll in school than it should be to prove occupancy for a STR. And I would personally feel very comfortable with the idea of showing the license and or passport and 2 bills or whatever the school district did. I feel like that's pretty standard. I can't find the section where.
Packet page 83.
Okay.
Section C.
Okay, here we
And
go,
so-
thank you.
So the code what the code is establishing is that they need 3 forms of proof of residency, and then the details are going to be within the application itself.
Can we amend it? Okay, I see what you're saying. So can we amend it to say, to prove primary residency, the operator must provide at least 3 forms of documentation, comma, one of which is a driver's license or passport, comma, to the administrator, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we're requiring a real document and not, an AT&T bill, a Comcast bill, and a PG&E bill.
Well, hardline utility bills are a typical way of a form of proof of residency, so are you requesting to take that out?
No, I'm requesting to add a clause.
To add, okay.
That specifies that, one of those 3 forms of identification should be a driver's license or a passport.
I see. So would it?
That was just handed.
Oh, thank you. I think so like a state or federal issued
State-
ID.
Yeah, exactly, some sort of, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's the right language. Does that,
So one
Please.
of the IDs has to be a state or federally issued identification card.
yes. So somebody could have a driver's license saying, I live on ABC Stockton Street, and then they have a utility bill and another utility bill. And now they've shown 3 IDs, and one of them was a driver's license.
Or otherwise, you could own the home and have a utility bill and never live there.
Right.
Or register your vehicle to it, pick up your license. People do that all the time. They register out of state to save on taxes.
Yeah.
It's very common.
Totally agree with you. So I see 2 head shakes.
Yeah.
I'm a yes. 4 head shakes, 5 head shakes, 6 head shakes, consensus. Okay,
That's fine.
thank you. Okay. How did folks feel about clarifying that a host is on site during evening hours?
I mean, look, I think that if you're going to be and I will say, 60 days is aggressive. It's very aggressive. But clearly, this is what the public has requested and has advocated for years. I feel it would be flippant and frivolous to not require somebody to be there at night. That is when most of the problems occur, is at night. Going to bed with kids, having anxiety that your kid's going to get woken up or somebody's going to be aggressive or whatever it is, it just stinks. All of this effort has been made. I feel it would be really, really frivolous if we overlook that. Now, I did read in some public comment the request to have somebody there 24/7, which I do believe is unreasonable. People need to function during the day. They have other jobs and whatnot. But at night, there needs to be somebody there that can address the situation immediately.
For hosted.
That's my opinion.
Director Updegrave.
Yeah, and just something to consider is that not everybody works a traditional 9-to-5 job or is retired, and that there are reasons why people are potentially not home during certain hours. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Would there be a way then to have an operator available?
Well, I think that's the idea too of the responsible party and having the responsible party, so you always have someone who's available 24/7 that needs to respond within 30 minutes. And I think that is provided to help, fill that gap because, not every operator is going to have may not have a traditional schedule.
Okay, but if I'm a nurse and I'm working at night and I get a 911 and I'm in the middle of helping with a surgery or I'm in labor and delivery and I'm helping a woman deliver a baby, I'm not going to look at my phone and within 30 minutes be able to practically address an issue that is affecting multiple other homes in the neighborhood. It's just not logical. I don't think that's logical. I think that if they are working at night and that is totally fine, that they need to appoint somebody else to be on site. We're kind of going like, well, sorry, they work at night, and like hopefully they'll get to it.
Right. And that's I think the idea, again, behind having the responsible party that's available 24/7 and to respond within 30 minutes.
But having a responsible party available 24/7 and able to respond in 30 minutes is different, correct, than having somebody on site at night?
That's correct. And an operator can designate someone, any operator can designate, doesn't have to be the responsible party. So the responsible party can be another person, it could be the operator.
And I asked the question, so I'm jumping in. I don't quite know how I feel about this because I see what you're saying, Dr. Updegrave, and I concur that not everyone is traditional. But I do think that by deciding to operate a short-term rental, you are taking on the mantle of responsibility to operate it in a certain way. And I think that if you're doing a permit for an unhosted, then you've gone through a huge amount of rigmarole to get to that permit. And if you have the leniency that we do by providing hosted, I almost think that that's part of the burden of operating this type of business. I think that's what was envisioned. So, thank you. Okay.
So,
Please.
So I would agree with that. If you work nights, then you get a permit for an unhosted. If you can't be there from 10 to 7, or whatever we decide is that, quiet hours, and I personally think that the host should be on site during whatever, we could mirror those hours to the quiet hours. But otherwise, you're unhosted if you work nights and you're subject to this 60-night limit. It's as simple as that. I mean, it's life choices.
No date nights for STR members. I said no date nights for STR hosts.
They can have date nights, just not when they're hosting an STR.
Yeah, 60 nights a year, man. Give me a break. Come on.
Well, okay. So I think Commissioner Davis and I agree. Does anyone else? I mean, I'm looking for consensus.
Yeah, I think otherwise it is an unhosted.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, if I may, I think there's consensus, but there'd be no reason why you couldn't, if you had that, like, for instance, I'm on call certain times of the year, so I would have no control over having to leave and possibly not having to be able to come back. There's all kinds of scenarios. But the responsibility, as you pointed to, Chair, would be to have a secondary or even third designated. If you can't reach this person within, that, when the call is made, there would be secondary or third, possibly even numbers. But that also, if there is not a response within that time, that also is a violation, I believe, of the permit agreement, isn't it? That could be easily construed as a permit violation.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Redfield, do you mean if the responsible party didn't respond?
Isn't responding, or there's no,
That's correct.
anyone, okay, perfect, thank you.
So just to clarify, the responsible party can be more than one natural person. It can be a group. And if none of them respond, it's a violation. Is that what we're saying?
No, the operator can be designated as the responsible party or can designate another person as the responsible party. So they don't have to be two different people. It's really at the discretion of the operator. If they're able to fulfill all of the requirements for a responsible party, they could be the responsible party, or they could designate another person that can meet those requirements. So it would just be one person for the responsible party.
For any particular rental, there's one and only one responsible party.
Potentially. Potentially one operator and one responsible party. They could be the same person or two different people.
Yeah, they don't have to be the same person, but
Correct.
the person who would want to contact them would know exactly which individual he or she is contacting.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
So are we then, just to confirm, my fellow commissioners, are we then saying that if you are not capable of being there between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m., that it is unhosted?
That's
Within-
what
you
I'm
said within
saying.
30
That's what
minutes,
I'm
right?
saying.
No.
Yeah.
Commissioner Davis and I are saying that a host of a hosted STR should be on site during the evening hours. I don't think that's what Commissioner Redfield is saying.
Sorry.
So we do
but
not have
Are we saying like
consensus either
within
way.
30 minutes, right? Because you go to the
No.
grocery store, you, like,
So I think they're
On-site-
two
You're
separate
What
things.
grocery stores open at 10 o'clock at night?
Between 10 and
That's
8
true.
a.m., you are on site. So yes, if you walk down the block and come back to your home, 5 minutes later, you take your dog on a walk, that is not, I think, what we're referencing. I think it's like, 97% of those hours, you are available to deal with an issue that occurs.
So one thing, I'll just jump in, Chair Hauser. So the difficulty in regulating is that you can't weave into the regulation those types of exceptions which come naturally, which are that they took the dog for a walk. So then they're not in the house between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. or whatever hours you're going to say. Or they're walking, they're taking something to the neighbor, or they're on a call outside. Those types of nuances aren't in the they wouldn't be in the regulation. So it's difficult to enforce because naturally people who are taking a walk or outside but near the residence would say, no, I'm in compliance. I'm here, but I'm just not in the property itself. So it's difficult.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, if I may?
Please.
So it seems to me that I feel like we're getting two subjects confused or mixed up, not confused, because I don't think any of us are confused. But, so we're talking about, to be considered hosted, you need to be on site from 10 to 7, 10 to 8, whatever we decide. The other thing is about response time for an unhosted is 30 minutes.
Right.
We're
conflating
we're conflating. And obviously, the intention of it being hosted and having the person there through those hours is because it's going to be a deterrent to disruptive behavior by the guest. So if you have to go walk your dog for 10 minutes, I'm not sure that becomes an issue. Ultimately, you're in for the evening, right? Am I oversimplifying?
I agree with you I think you and I are on the same page. I think where I would be potentially open to discussion personally is on what those hours are.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 10 to 8? Is it midnight to 6? I think that makes more sense to me than a discussion on whether or not they have to be there. I think they have to be there.
Yeah.
May I offer a point of clarification, Chair Hauser? So all STRs, regardless of whether hosted or unhosted, are required to have a responsible party designated. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
I think that's what Commissioner Davis was making sure that we were recalling, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I wasn't confusing the two with the 30 minutes. I just thought that there are times when you have to step out of your house.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Well, let's maybe take two temperatures, and maybe this isn't possible, but I think kind of the binary, should somebody be in their home in the evening on a hosted STR, and then what should those hours be? So
I think yes, because otherwise it's not hosted. I would
Okay,
push
yeah.
for 6 for a lot of us to leave for work before 8
agreed,
a.m.
right?
I don't think a lot of disruptions are happening between
6 and 8
6:45 and 8 a.m.
I agree with you.
I support that completely. If you're there, it's hosted. If you're not there, it's unhosted.
Okay, so I'm actually seeing consensus. Everybody would like to see that the host is on site during the evening. We've set the goalpost at 6 a.m., and I saw all of the heads nodding for the morning hour. What is the evening hour?
I'm happy with midnight.
You're happy with midnight?
Yeah, I think midnight works. It's a limiter, but it's not extreme to the 10 o'clock, because that's a lot of people are still doing whatever at 10 o'clock. So I think midnight to 6 is highly restrictive. to the operator, but I think that works. I think a midnight to
It
6.
essentially means they have to sleep there.
Yes.
And it doesn't undermine quiet hours, which is separate,
Which is still a violation.
which is still a violation, correct? Anybody else?
I don't know. I completely understand what you guys are saying. This is challenging. And I know it's hard. Regardless of what we decide, enforcement is going to be incredibly challenging. It's going to be up to these people to enforce this. And so I don't want to be overly restrictive with 10. I feel like midnight on a weekday, like, God, that would suck, man.
I agree.
I've got 3 kids, 6 years old and under, and if I am dealing with this at midnight on a week, I'm so lucky that I am not in their position. Are you kidding me? I am so lucky. And so I'm trying to be empathetic without being overly.
I think we all felt the of the idea of having your kid playing outside across from a 16 home or 16 sleep.
This is
STR.
challenging for me.
It's a
I'd
hard
split the
thing. So what are
difference
you
at 11.
proposing?
I'd split the difference at 11.
I would do that.
That's what I was going to suggest, 11.
Okay.
I think less is more.
I don't know what that, does that mean midnight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Redfield?
I think 11 is reasonable. I think that is a good split the difference thing, because
Okay.
at 11, the news is over, I have to get up and go to work tomorrow, that type of thing. So I think that is a reasonable compromise. This is all compromise, so
Yeah,
I
was
think
fine
that's
with
a good
10.
one.
I'm fine with me. I don't care.
Okay.
I also just want to make a comment that, the positives and the negatives from the audience, this is incredibly aggressive policy. And we are doing our very best to compromise on your behalf because you have shown up, because you have done this for so many years. We can't landlock this. So, please have empathy for this side as well.
Okay. So just to be clear, and then I'd like to turn it to staff to make sure that we have deliberated sufficiently. Hosted STRs will require a host to be on site during the hours of 11 p.m. to 6 a.m.
And was that a definition or operational requirement? Or should we figure out where it fits best?
I see Ms. Pisano has an opinion, and I want to.
No, that's okay. I was going to suggest putting it in the definition, but I tend to think it should probably go into the operational requirements. Yes.
I heard a lot of concurrence.
So that would be 4905, I think, is all the operational requirements. We'll fit it into 4905.
Perfect.
Somewhere.
Point of clarification, a host can be more than one person, right? If you have a married couple that's renting out a bedroom in their house, one of them can be at work while one of them is there.
Well, this would say that the host, I'm looking at the definition. Sorry.
The operator.
Yeah, it's the operator is the host. So whoever is identified as the operator.
It has to be that single operator.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. I saw that staff read into the record the quiet hours, and I just want to make sure.
Visitor hours.
Yes, visitor hours. I'm calling them quiet hours, but yes, visitor hours. And I want to make sure that there are no questions on that and that we have consensus to staff's modification.
So just to clarify, visitor hours, I read into the record as 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. But there were a couple of us who wanted to define quiet hours. And I don't want quiet hours to get balled in with host needs to be their hours. I think we need a separate definition
Yes.
for that.
There should be a universal
yeah.
hosted, unhosted.
Quiet hours.
Quiet hours.
Absolutely. I think we want to avoid ambiguity in this.
Well, what, can I, Do
and
we have
impact.
a noise ordinance?
So we
that
have
covers
lots.
Yeah, we do.
There are, I think I counted, there's 4 or 5 references to the noise ordinance in the STR ordinance, and I
I
pulled it
remember
all out.
decibels and hours and.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sound meters.
If you
all
can
kinds of stuff.
find that, city attorney, can you clarify that for
Yeah.
us, just what
Yeah.
those are? I know it's
I
it's in
wrote
there
it
somewhere.
down, but now I can't find it. Give me a second, please. Thank you.
Absolutely.
The primary noise standards, it is, as City Attorney Bizzano said, mentioned several times throughout the ordinance. The primary, I think, level of specificity that you might be asking on, Commissioner Redfield, is in the operational standards 49050, which is on packet page 88. That says, in addition to the standards that are provided in Chapter 10 of Title V and Chapter 28 of Title V, those are our noise regulations. The prohibits the use of radio receivers, instruments, those kinds of things out of doors, and then prohibits amplified music from being heard outside of the property line from the interior.
So I've read that, and that's rather, it doesn't specify times.
That's correct.
Right. I
But
mean,
it
so
does.
the noise ordinance itself doesn't specify times. It's just, if there is a disturbing noise that violates the noise ordinance, then it's a violation. So it doesn't specify times for a reason, because it can happen in the morning, it can happen at night. It's just a
Kind
disturbance.
of irrelevant, the
Right.
time, it's the annoyance
Right.
factor or whatever, so the nuisance factor. Yeah.
Right.
And then these are additional, what's in subsection O here is additional to the noise ordinance.
So subsection N, has defined hours for outdoor pool spas and hot tubs. And I almost wonder if there needs to be more added to what's prohibited between the hours of 10 and 7. I don't know if that's what you're searching
Looking at
for.
the exact same thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that is reasonable to include basic, I don't know how you would add that into, again, Chapter 10, Title 5, and Chapter 28, Title 5 of this code, to limit the amplified music, if you will, excess noise into that timeframe, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. Or would that interfere with an existing city muni code to?
Well, I think subsection O applies 24 hours a day. So
Okay.
it would be repetitive or duplicative.
Redundant.
Yeah.
So, okay.
And Chair Hauser?
Yeah.
I did find that list. I think Director Updegrave has mentioned a few of these, but just to close the circle, it's 4905D, H, O, and P that reference noise, and particularly noise regulations in the code.
H, O, and what was the last one?
P.
Okay.
Chair, if I may. Also, I just noticed this as well on Section P on page 88. Each operator shall maintain a continuous noise monitor. So I think our bases are pretty well covered on that. So thank you.
So this is just food for thought. I don't remember the last Airbnb I stayed at that didn't publish their quiet hours. It wasn't like explicit in your face, like a sign on the door and in the 4 different places, and the violation or fee that you would incur if you made noise after 10 p.m. It was really, really, really clear.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the code section that's referenced in here, which is 5-10.03D. And I feel like the one that I would be most concerned with, which is like the party noise, says yelling, shouting, and similar noises. Yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, or singing on the public streets, particularly between the hours 10 and 7, or at any time or place so as to annoy or disturb the quiet, comfort, or repose of persons in any office or in any dwelling, hotel, or other type of residence, or of any person in the vicinity. So I feel like it's covered in the ordinance, but something like there's a part of me that wants it to somehow be restated in the ordinance in particular, and I don't know if that unties things, but that's what I'm feeling.
May I?
Please.
So the ordinance is great. It goes into detail about karaoke machines and radio receivers and yelling and this and that. To me, that's a definition. What we're trying to do by talking about quiet time and setting hours for quiet time are set an expectation for behavior. It's no different than when you're in a campground and they say quiet hours are. As Commissioner Devine said, every Airbnb she's been in states quiet hours are. I really think that in this document, we need to define quiet hours.
So add quiet hours with a definition that says
because we refer
11 and 7.
Yeah, I think quiet hours should be 10 and 7, just like the pool hours, personally.
I agree with you. I'm only making the distinction because the code section that's referenced specifically says 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So I think if we're going to define it differently, we need some guidance on how to not create an internal conflict.
What code section?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm in chapter 10, 5-1003 of the municipal code.
I thought it says, I read it to say 10 to 7.
The ordinance says 10 to 7. Our current municipal code, which is referenced, says 11 to 7.
In reference to radios, phonographs, musical instruments, and similar devices.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're right, because yelling and shouting.
Oh,
is
and then
10 to
yelling
7.
and shouting is
Right.
10 p.m.
And just to be clear, those are enumerated enumerated violations, but the general provision for that finds noise, certain noise to be unlawful is 5-1002, and it doesn't have any timeframes.
I see.
Any
Because
lawful.
I'm in 03.
It's unlawful for any person to make or continue or cause to be made or continued any loud, disturbing, unnecessary, or unusual noise, or any noise which annoys, disturbs, injures, or endangers the comfort, health, repose, peace, or safety of other persons within the city. I believe somebody read that during public comment.
So Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Devine, it sounds like you would like a definition entitled quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. that's then referenced further into the ordinance as well.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
It's up to the Planning Commission.
Consensus? Consensus. Okay, I've got all head nods. So I just want to make sure that I restate, it's not just the definition, but it's the addition into the operational requirements of that definition so that it appears.
So in other words, adding the definition of quiet hours and then also including reference to quiet hours in the operational requirements.
Exactly,
In 4905. Yep.
It would be good if the visitor hours, the pool hours, and the quiet hours were identical.
I agree. I think we should just make them all 10 to 7.
Well, except for the visitor hours are AM
Oh,
and PM.
I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah.
7 to 10, you're thinking for visitor hours? It would simplify things. But then we have the host that only has to be there from 11 to 6. So we may as well.
Let's leave the host being there. Okay.
I'm good with quiet hours from 10 to 7.
Okay. I think we leave it. Okay.
I do agree with you, though. I love consistency.
Do you like consistency? That's a good point, Commissioner Godwin. And then the last one I had was, I did want to advocate for a couple of things from the handout that we were given as commissioners, making them into the ordinance. I think especially in light of the last meeting that we had, I think it's really important to clarify that we're in a housing shortage and that it's really important to us that we preserve our housing for folks who live here. Yeah.
Are you referring to the whereases and the recitals in the resolution?
I think
Can you
it's
clarify?
Yeah, I think it's an important recital to express that California has declared a housing crisis and that I think it's written exceptionally well. Whereas preservation of existing housing is an integral component of the City of Pacifica housing element. It's that whole section, the underlined sections, make sense to me.
The red line?
Yeah, of the red line.
So do we have a majority consensus from the Planning Commission to add those to the recitals in the resolution?
I was going to pull the commission, but I wanted to make sure that staff didn't have an issue with that.
So we're talking about there was a handout provided to the Planning Commission. We're talking about the 3 underlined resolutions on the second, or recitals on the second page, which is, whereas the California State Legislature has declared that housing is a statewide concern, and whereas preservation of existing housing is an integral component of the City of Pacifica housing element, and whereas the stock of naturally affordable housing that comes from multifamily complexes is being impacted by short-term rentals, reducing affordable housing.
Yes.
So adding those to the resolution for the Planning Commission.
Yes. Does staff see an issue with that? Okay. Does the commission feel comfortable adding that?
And we're talking about all 5 of the paragraphs in red?
No,
Okay.
No,
just the
I'm talking
3
about the 3 underlined.
Just the underlined, okay.
I just don't think it's appropriate to speak about public comments since we've received them in both directions, and I don't think it's appropriate in the whereas statements, though I concur with the statement itself.
Can I ask a clarifying question just about process? And this is just like naivete on my part. These documents, like all of these whereas statements, and, I think we heard it multiple times, but how are they constructed? Where are they, at what point, like, where are they coming from kind of thing? I just would like to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, they typically echo findings and also outline some of the policy goals as well as the process.
Okay. So if there are independent advocacy groups or, multitude of public support in a different way, does that count as findings to add to this sort of thing, or is it just totally different? Is it something that's, I'm really asking because I don't know.
Yeah, so the recitals are prepared by staff and in conjunction with the city attorney's office, and we're sort of creating a snapshot of how the resolution or ordinance, whatever is the recitals are referencing or are part of, how that came to be. So that's really all the recitals are doing, is telling the story of how the document came to be and how the decision was essentially came before the body and was led to a determination by the body. The findings, just to clarify, because you asked about findings, findings are a little bit different. Findings are in the body of the document itself, so in the resolved language or the ordinance itself, and they are sometimes required to be made depending on what the document is. So you'll have, so for zoning ordinance amendments, you have to make certain findings in order to adopt an ordinance or recommend an ordinance. So those findings will be in the body of the document. or there can be other types of findings in the body of the document itself, but they're different from recitals.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It's helpful. Thank you.
The recitals are just sort of telling the story of how the decision came to be. The findings are determinations made by the body to make the decision that they made.
And Commissioner Devine, the reason that I'm advocating for those three in particular is because they're factual. And while I agree with a lot of the opinions in here, I'm not sure if it's appropriate to advocate that all of these opinions get integrated. So that's why personally I pushed for those three. But I think that kind of concludes what I have on my list. And if I want to make sure that everybody gets heard before we move with a recommendation.
I did have, so just a comment to page 74 and 75 that was pointed out by the commenter, well, several commenters, including Cindy, who gave us the handout. I actually Googled a very general question about the benefits of STRs, and the AI-generated answer read very similarly to this, but there was also another side to it, and it was how it can be a detriment to the community. And I just wanted to share that I tend to agree that I don't think that 74 and 75 show the complete picture. And to that point also, in the public comment that was included in the packet, they talk about the revenue generated by short-term rentals. But I don't think there's ever been a complete financial analysis by the city or by anyone to determine, that's like saying, my business is successful because gross sales are $1 million. Well, yeah, but what did it cost you to take in that $1 million? So I really just wanted to voice that opinion. And apart from that, the only other question I had, I found it interesting that a number of the commenters referred to the 6-bedroom house that says its occupancy is 16, when in the ordinance it says only 2 per bedroom. So they're advertising that they're out of compliance.
Yeah.
And I wonder, maybe it's rhetorical, but what do we do about that? Maybe it's something that we require the platforms. Part of the requirements that we're going to put on, or try to put on Airbnb and the various platforms, that it doesn't seem to me that you should be able to advertise an occupancy rate that is directly against our ordinance limit.
I just want to add to that really quickly, Commissioner. It's actually state-regulated occupancy based on square footage per bedroom. I know this because I've had to manage properties before, where in San Francisco particularly, where people have packed multiple people in, and even with children, there are occupancy limits per bedroom based on square footage, per local ordinances, and actually regulated by the state. So just want to throw that in there real quick.
And this current ordinance, too, is not in effect.
So is it an edit of a previous one, or is it an edit of a previous draft? The original ordinance was completely repealed, and because I was going off the fact that it wasn't redlined.
So this ordinance is repealing the current ordinance.
Okay. But should we pass this ordinance, or should we do our resolution recommending, et cetera, then somebody advertising 16 people occupancy in a 6-bedroom house would be advertising a violation of our occupancy?
In November.
In November, yeah. Okay.
Right. When the ordinance is adopted, 30 days after its adoption, it will go into effect outside of the coastal zone. In the coastal zone, it has to be certified.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Commissioner Ferguson.
I understood that the ordinance wouldn't go into effect until the end of this permit year. You're saying that
certain provisions won't go into effect until.
Oh, I didn't realize any of it went in before the end of this year. Okay.
Yeah, it will be in, if adopted by the city council, if it moves forward on July 14th and goes to its second reading in August, it would be effective prior to October 1st. And the renewal period is October 1st through October 31st.
So just to clarify, and as a matter of mild curiosity, What is the current occupancy limit in the current ordinance that's being repealed?
There is none.
There isn't one? Okay, thank you.
That's tight. Okay, sorry. Well, I think that a lot of years have gone into what's before us, and I think that staff has done a really good job of taking a ton of feedback from a ton of places and coalescing it into something legible where almost every one of our questions was, just look at this other section. And I'm really grateful that staff has put in such good work. I'm also really grateful to the community. I've met with some of you. I've been alerted to the problem by some of you. And it's just a crummy situation, and I'm really glad that there's a solution. And I'm really glad that you guys really put so much work into it, because I don't think we would have known what Half Moon Bay's ordinance said or what all these other ordinances said. So this is really a testament to what you guys have done and everyone that's not in the room. So, thanks. Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion?
May I make a comment before
Please make
before a
comment.
motion?
Yes.
I just want to kind of reiterate that. I want to thank staff, the public. The word that stuck out to me through all of this was impact. Everyone involved in this is impacted. The city is impacted. Obviously, the people around STRs are impacted, and the operators are impacted. This is, again, this is a compromise on every level. And I think, again, city attorney, staff, the commission, the council have all really worked very, very hard on a very difficult situation that every city around the world is, I think, dealing with. It's not unique to Pacifica, and every city has its own unique challenges. And I think we've done excellent work all around, everybody involved in it, the public, especially we know the passion that Pacifica has. So it's quite remarkable. So hopefully this is a compromise that everyone can accept and isn't going to hurt anyone too badly, because we know it's going to, again, it's going to impact everyone involved. So thank you.
Would anyone like to?
I'd like to
Please.
make one comment too. The other thing I think we've got to remember, this seems like a big improvement, but it's not cast in stone. If there's anything wrong with this that we learn over the next year or so of trying or implementing it and see what happens, we do have the ability to adjust it. And please be open and continue to make suggestions about what would be better than this if we pass this tonight and City Council implements it as an ordinance, because we continue to need your help.
Okay. Would somebody? Commissioner Davis.
Part of the reason I wanted to read it, so you know I'm catching on to how things go. So, we didn't change anything. So I move that the Planning Commission finds the draft ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15301, existing facilities, and section 15061B3, common sense, and adopts the resolution included as attachment A to the staff report to initiate text amendment TA 127-25 and recommends approval to the City Council and repeal resolution number 2025-001 and incorporates all maps and testimony into the record by reference.
I believe that we need to add the verbiage as amended pursuant to these discussions, or whatever, however City Attorney Bizzano instructs us.
I think Director After Grave is going to read. So the motion would need to include as amended, and the amendments are?
Yeah, and I'm going to read them just to make sure we've got all of them. Perfect. So if I can read it, if I can read my own handwriting, to the operational requirements, 4-4905D, adding the date and time of pickup for solid waste. Under definitions, 4.4901, under the definition of primary residence, including that JADU is not included. Also under definitions, adding guest and visitor. And then Yeah, that was it. And then under the permit requirements in subsection C, I'm sorry, I didn't write down this section, but it's packet page 83, to add that a state or issued identification is one of the requirements to prove residency. Under the
State or federally issued?
state or federal, yeah, state or issued, yes. State or federal.
Issued by whom?
State or federal issued. That the host has to be on site overnight, 11 to 6 p.m.
11 p.m. to 6 a.m.
11 p.m. to 6 a.m. is what my notes also say, to the operational requirements and to the definition, or I think or is just the operational? Is it just the operational?
For quiet?
For the host on site overnight?
No, just the operation.
Just the operational, right. To 4905, add quiet hours, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., and that's adding a definition and the operational requirements. Adding to the whereas recitals in the PC resolution, the 3 items that begin with, whereas the California State Legislature has declared housing as a statewide concern. And
Can I add?
I believe that's all.
I just want to add, I thought I heard consensus on making all of the hours for visitor hours, pool hours, consistent, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m.
We realized we were creating a bigger issue.
Okay,
So,
sorry.
Yeah.
So that's not a
So
consensus.
this is not a consensus item. So with those, do you accept the clarifications to your motion?
I accept the clarifications to my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Let's please vote. The motion passes unanimously. Oh, sorry.
Motion by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Ferguson. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, so I believe that takes us to commission communications. Okay, seeing none. Oh, seeing one.
I just want to announce one thing. I believe this coming Saturday, the 21st, is Brews and Blues on Palmetto Avenue between noon and 5. All local businesses will be open, a lot of activity, a lot of music. If you haven't attended it prior, it's a lot of fun. You'll see a lot of friends and hopefully meet some new ones and encourage economic development in Pacifica.
Thank you. Okay, staff communications.
We have no communications this evening. Well, I will, just the reminder that rezoning is scheduled for July 7th.
Yes, and I believe if anyone is planning to miss that or be out of town, can you clarify? Okay, we should have a full house. Can someone make a motion for adjournment, please? I look at you.
I'm going to move to adjourn, but I would appreciate in the future if we don't do huge planning commissions the Monday after a holiday weekend.
Okay.
I'll move we
second
adjourn.
the motion.
Second.
Vote.
Second.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Commissioner Devine.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.